All of the sleep research shows that if we keep a general sleep schedule, meaning that we go to sleep around the same time every night and we wake up at the same time every morning, we actually have better circadian rhythms. So that's following the light-dark schedule of the planet. And we also have better metabolic control and stress tolerance control. Now, you're going to say, well, Betty, I have an event on Thursday night that I have to go to later. So there are going to be times that we have to do that. But what we want to do is protect the other times around it and keep our general schedule on the days that I can keep that schedule. The holiday season is here, and with it comes endless to-do lists, crowded stores, and mounting stress that can leave you feeling overwhelmed and irritable. Instead of enjoying the magic of the season, you're stuck battling stress and holiday tension. Imagine breezing through the holidays calm, focused, and in control. No more snapping at loved ones, stress eating, or feeling like you can't keep up. I want to introduce you to Stress Less Mastery. This supplement is a herbal form to help control cortisol and reduce your stress, so you can finally take charge of your stress and enjoy the holiday season the way you deserve. This Black Friday, get Stress Less Mastery for $29.95 with free shipping. A huge savings off the regular price of $45 plus $9.95 shipping. Don't wait. This exclusive offer is only available for a limited time. Visit metabolicblueprint.com to secure your order today. Again, that's metabolicblueprint.com. Welcome back to Menopause Mastery. So we are dead set in the middle of the holiday season. And so I thought this would be the best time to talk about holiday stress, hormones, and how to save your sanity, especially as a perimenopause and menopausal woman. You know, the holidays are the time of year where joy really collides head-on with stress. And it's not just about our mother-in-law or our endless to-do list or the turkey that didn't get defrosted or the endless requirement of shopping and trying to get everything in. You know, our hormones actually can be contributing to some of that chaos. So today, I'm really going to talk about what's going on with this season, obviously what's happening with your hormones that may contribute to a sense of stress and overwhelm. And then we're going to go through some of my tools and techniques to improve dealing with this holiday season so we can actually find joy in it, and some of the science and other information about what's really happening in your body. You know, so I'm here to really tell you and help you stop blaming yourself for, snapping at the kids or, screaming at the Christmas lights when they don't work. The real thing is if you're feeling more overwhelmed than Santa Claus on Christmas Eve, this episode is really to help you uncover why, and better yet, how to really take back control. And let's really start with why stress feels worse as a perimenopause and menopausal woman. So when we're over 40 and the stress is hitting differently than it did before, our hormones are really part of the playing field, and they are really part of the experience. And so we have to blame it on our hormones. So I want you to first know that it's not your fault that you might feel like you have less F's to give and that your deal with it chemistry has taken a serious nosedive. It's not really your lack of holiday spirit. It's the threshold in which you can put up with crap. And so let's talk first about what's really happening with the science. So obviously during perimenopause and menopause, our sex hormones, predominantly estrogen and progesterone, the things that help us buffer a little bit of this stress, and testosterone, all start to fluctuate like a crappy stock market. And for many of us, the progesterone levels have declined to the extent that it's starting to affect the receptors for GABA. So progesterone, if you're hearing me for the first time, is this very calming hormone. And it helps your neurotransmitter called GABA actually sort of dock into its receptors and turn on the anti-stress relaxation response. So think of GABA as your body's natural Xanax. And so when we have progesterone levels decline, because it's one of the first hormones that declines is during perimenopause, we start to see sleep, especially interrupted sleep, where we might fall asleep, but we can't stay asleep. And then we also see things like a shortened fuse. So a lot of what I hear clinically for the last 20 years, and all of my clinicians that treat across the United States, is overwhelmingly women say, man, I have such a low threshold for crap. and I have such high irritability. And it's unnerving because we feel like we shouldn't feel that way. We're shitting all over ourselves about how we shouldn't feel, how we shouldn't experience something. But we have to understand that the biochemistry of the body is changing in such a way that the chemicals that our body makes that actually makes us feel better are declining, right? So it's not just sex drive. It's not just, having hot flashes. The reality is those hormones that keep us calm and the neurotransmitters that interact with it are reduced in comparison to when you were 20 and 30 years old. So progesterone is the big hormone that really buffers the stress response. Testosterone also helps with mood and motivation, and it is a brain hormone specifically in the dopamine pathway. So dopamine is our reward mechanism, our sense of excitement and anticipation. It is definitely the thing that we get a hit of when we scroll on our phone, or maybe we are cruising the, luxury websites for whatever accessory item we want to buy, whatever those things are that we like. Dopamine is what we get from that, right? And that's that hit. Well, dopamine and testosterone interact, and testosterone, we have it, but we make a lot less as we go through our 40s and 50s and beyond. And so we get a lack of motivation and also less joy or less anticipatory sort of excitement because of that loss of testosterone. And then last but not least is estrogen. So estrogen obviously fluctuates wildly and then declines when we finally hit menopause. And estrogen is one of those hormones that is kind of like the three little bears. We want a little bit, not too much, and we want it sort of balanced. And when estrogen declines also, we tend to see a lot more anxiety, depression, and overwhelm. Now, what is the reason for this? When estrogen drops, right, especially estrogen drops, but if we've already got testosterone dropping and we already have progesterone dropping because they are all along for the ride, what we see is cortisol, the stress hormone, gets a green light to run the show, right? So what that means is the stress hormone cortisol that is designed for us to respond to long-term stress and to buffer that sort of adrenaline response in a fight or flight gets the green light, and it just gets to run everything. And this is why the little things like trying to untangle the Christmas lights or find the, gift you hid in the gift closet 6 months ago when you found it and you can't figure out where you put it, seems like life or death situation, like you're ready to just smack somebody. So the reality is when we are in perimenopause and menopause, the take-home message is cortisol and your adrenal stress response is running the show. Now, would this be a problem if we lived a fairly balanced life? I would say probably not. We probably wouldn't see the extreme sort of responses that we see today. But in the Western world, particularly in the United States, are burning the candle at both ends, not relaxing, not taking time off, putting time into things and saying yes to things that we don't really want to say yes to, overworked, underpaid, undersupported. All of those things leave our stress response in this long-term situation where it has been too high for too long. And the reality is when we lose the rest of those hormones, we now have very little fucks to give, and we are very ready to smack somebody for it. Now, what does the research really say? So, I always like to bring the street cred because I think it's really important because I'm a researcher first and foremost on top of being a nutritional clinician. So a recent study that was published in the Menopause Journal in 2020 found that the lower estrogen levels were directly linked to heightened stress response in women. So what this means is that with the loss of estrogen, our stress tolerance, our mood, and obviously our sleep capacity is significantly impaired. And this is why you feel like you're ready to scream. And it's also why we see in the research that 1 in 5 women experience depression, 1 in 3 women experience anxiety as a primary symptom of perimenopause and menopause. Now, let me tell you kind of my own experience, right? So I have generally a very high tolerance for stress. I'm one of those people that generally, if things are falling down around me, I actually sort of shift into high gear. And that's how I've always operated. And I've worked in environments where pretty much a significant portion of my life, I was either an entrepreneur and everything was riding on my back, or I worked in an environment where it was high stress because if whatever I worked on and managed didn't work, literally the company couldn't make money. And so I lived in this sort of environment for a long time. But what was interesting to me is when I got into perimenopause, particularly the tail end of it, my threshold for it became so much smaller. And how it showed up was I would get snappy and irritable. And so what would normally just be nothing at all, I would have just this ready to like kick something. So for example, I remember last year I was making some food for my mom's assisted living center because we were trying to, bring Thanksgiving to them and make it fun. And I had dropped some things off of the counter. Now, under normal circumstances, I would just lean over, pick it up, and put it back on the counter. But this time, I pick it up, I throw it on the counter, I kick the cabinet door, and all that showed was that what would normally not bother me is now really bothering me, right? And so the reality is when we have less hormones on board, our sex hormones in particular, our stress chemistry is ruling the roost. And if you're reading into that, the reality of your rest of your world stress is either going to make it worse or better. So if you go into the holiday season and you've already been burning the candle at both ends for months, if not years on end, your threshold is going to be lower than somebody else. And so we have to acknowledge that, right? So we have to acknowledge that. Now, what are some of the things that we can do to help really improve our stress tolerance? So I'm going to start with some of the easiest things to start with. And it's nutrients and supplements and dietary and lifestyle support to really help you manage the stress, right? So here's the good news is there are a lot of things that we can do to improve our stress tolerance. And so first and foremost is quality sleep. If you've listened to me for any length of time, you know that it's one of my non-negotiables. And it is absolutely one of the largest foundational pieces that leads to longevity, leads to healthy longevity, and improve risk profile for all-cause mortality, including dementia and heart attack and stroke, you name it. And so what that means is we have to protect our sleep. And this is a time period during our lives when we often have things at night and abnormal schedules, and we're trying to get things done. And we try and sort of stack things on. And I call it the mommy hour. We stay up later than everybody else because now nobody's bugging us and we can get done the things that we want to get done. Or we take a moment to then read a book that we want to read or listen to the podcast we didn't get a chance to listen to. But we don't want to do those things and ignore the most important thing, which is getting high quality sleep. And so some of the things that are very basic but very important is you want to keep your sleep schedule. All of the sleep research shows that if we keep a general sleep schedule, meaning that we go to sleep around the same time every night and we wake up at the same time every morning, we actually have better circadian rhythms. So that's following the light-dark schedule of the planet. And we also have better metabolic control and stress tolerance control. And so now you're going to say, well, Betty, I have an event on Thursday night that I have to go to later. So there are going to be times that we have to do that, but what we want to do is protect the other times around it and keep our general schedule on the days that I can keep that schedule, right? So some of that may also be saying no to things you don't want to attend. One of the most powerful things we can do to protect our sleep and other things is also manage our boundaries and make sure that we agree to the things that we really want to agree to and decline the things that we really don't want to do. One of the beauties, I think, of this time period of life is we really don't care anymore. And a lot of times we start to come into our own with boundaries. We care a little bit less about what people think. We care a little bit less about keeping up with everybody else. And we care a little bit more about the things that are really important to us. And so the other thing I would recommend, if you find that you're so overcommitted on your schedule during the holiday season, look with discernment at which things you should go to, which things you don't need to go to, and which things you don't want to go to. Because many times we say things that we don't really want to do, and we agree to things that we don't really want to do, and we pay the price later on. And especially if it's around events and things that might take you off your game. So we need to protect our sleep. Exercise, which I'm not going to go into all the forms of exercise today, but also keeping a regular exercise routine together. Were you doing exercise? Now, are you maybe doing it at the same frequency you did it in September? Maybe not, but you want to keep exercise routines going. That's for multiple reasons. Number one, when we exercise, we give a physical outlet for our stress chemistry to get utilized. We have to remember that stress and cortisol is made in the body in anticipation of a response to something. So cortisol is made when we have a fight or flight experience that kicks us off. As animals, for most of our lifetimes, right, for the millennia we've been on the planet, our stress response was either to fight off a predator or to catch something, right? So our stressors were those things. And then on the bad side of that stressor would also be starving, right? So if we didn't have enough food, our cortisol would go up. That would keep us foraging for longer. We'd be able to go look for food for longer periods of time. So when you give your body a physical outlet for that stress, i.e. you go, do some high intensity intervals or burst training, you hit the gym and lift some weights, you give your body a place to utilize that stress chemistry. And it not only helps improve your moods, kicks up some endorphins, it stimulates things like testosterone and growth hormone, but it makes you feel better. And the research is clear. There is no reason to ever assume that research isn't out there. It is just radically clear that exercise is very important to our stress response. And so you want to keep those schedules where we've got some exercise on a consistent basis. Because the other thing that happens during the holidays is a lot of times, if we've made it this far in the year where we've been consistent doing healthy behaviors, what happens? The wheels come off the bus. We are no longer exercising. We're not sleeping, and we're not taking care of our dietary needs like we did in the months previously. We fall off the wagon, and then we spend that next 3 to 6 months trying to get back on the wagon. Well, keeping an exercise routine is one of those spokes to keep in the wheels so the wagon wheel doesn't fall apart. Number 3 is this is also the time period of holiday eating, right? Now, holiday eating, I'm going to have a whole episode about how to really rethink holiday eating. But let's just say there's a couple things that you absolutely need to prioritize to help manage your stress to make you feel better. At Minerva, we're transforming women's health by offering personalized bioidentical hormone treatments that truly respect your unique needs. We test, don't guess, because your well-being deserves nothing less. Experience the future of hormone health for women at Minerva. To find out more about how to restore hormone balance with a functional medicine approach, go to gethormonesnow.com. One of the most stressful things that you can do to your body is to eat haphazardly and or skip meals inappropriately. There is appropriate intermittent fasting, and then there is just crappy planning, right? So if you are doing intermittent fasting, it means that you have it planned out. You're making sure that you're getting adequate protein and macronutrients. When you do eat, you aren't white knuckling it to make it to that first meal, right? Those are all signs that you are doing something inappropriate for your body's chemistry. So my recommendation is keep a consistent dietary schedule. It's ideal to have 3 meals a day. Now, if you want to compress that window slightly, compress the window so you have a little longer of fasting. But this is not the time period of life to have breakfast and then skip lunch and then go into dinner, because we're going to create a blood sugar roller coaster. We're going to create a scenario that's going to raise our cortisol more, and we're going to have less deal with it chemistry to deal with it. So eating on a regular basis, prioritizing protein, right? Getting protein at every meal stabilizes your blood sugar. We need protein to build muscle. And it also helps because it's what our body makes things out of. So prioritizing protein, prioritizing fiber. The research is absolutely clear. If we get between 25 to 35 grams of fiber in our diet every day, it feeds our healthy microbiome. They produce an extraordinary amount of nutrients and enzymes and byproducts that are helpful for our body. And that fiber helps reduce our risk for mortality. It improves cardiovascular health, risk for metabolic syndrome and diabetes, just across the board. So eating fruits and vegetables, nuts and seeds, and dietary fiber. If we can prioritize those 2 things plus adequate hydration, right? Adequate hydration, that is a huge gain. So when you do have those nights where you're having, let's say, a special dinner, you can go a little off plan and you don't ruin everything. Like I said, I'm going to have a whole episode on how to really handle that. But What that means is you want to think about eating appropriately for your health on the times that you're not at a special event. And the goal in that is to do the 80-20 rule. The 80-20 rule says 80% of the time you eat to support your health. 20%, you can break the rules a little bit, which comes down to about 2 meals a week, where you go, okay, yeah, I might have, a dessert, or I'm going to have that glass of wine with my meal, but I'm not going to do it every single night because it happens to be between October 31st and January 3rd, right? So the reality is we need to think of these things as individual events that are only supposed to be a small part of our daily support, right? So keep a consistent dietary schedule. Now, let's get into the nutrients and other things, right? So you don't have to just survive, right? If we do the basics, the sleep, the exercise, and some dietary balancing, there are some nutrients and supplements that can really help you really balance the chaos, right? So the first thing I always think about, and it's pretty much universal, if you aren't taking magnesium right now, you need magnesium. It is involved in over 320 chemical reactions in the body. It helps support the nervous system. It helps support sleep. It helps calm your central nervous system. And there's different forms, but it is absolutely helpful, relaxes the skeletal muscle. So taking magnesium on a regular basis, particularly at night, is kind of your ultimate chill pill, right? So most people need somewhere between, 200 milligrams to about 600 milligrams of magnesium a day, depending on the person and their other dietary intake of magnesium. The different forms of magnesium can make a difference. So magnesium glycinate or magnesium bisglycinate is one of the more common forms because it doesn't have a bowel loosening effect, right? So it doesn't cause diarrhea as easily as a magnesium oxide or citrate. And it helps relax the central nervous system, muscle, and nerves. So it tends to be very calming. And a little bit of that at night can be very good for relaxation, but you can also do a little bit during the day if it doesn't make you feel sedated. Magnesium in the forms of magnesium threonate actually crosses the blood-brain barrier, and so it has an effect on the brain as well. And then you've got magnesium malate, which helps with your powerhouses, your mitochondria in your muscle tissue and cells. That can help if you have chronic fatigue and fibromyalgia. But definitely magnesium, and at a minimum, magnesium glycinate is a good choice. Another way to get magnesium, if you want to not ingest it, is to do magnesium sulfate or Epsom salt baths on a regular basis because you're absorbing it through the skin. And it helps absorb and it also makes your skin really soft. So you can add Epsom salt baths. But it is really like the ultimate mineral chill pill. And so that's something easy everybody can use and utilize magnesium on a regular basis. Now, B vitamins. Your B vitamins are your super friends, heroes. Most people think of B vitamins as either like B12 or just folate, B9, but we have a host of B vitamins and they all work together. So they have synergy together. So taking a B vitamin complex can also help with energy production because they help you fuel your energy. So B1, B2, B3, B5, and even B7 all play a role along with B12 in the energy cycle. And they also help us methylate, which is your B9 and B12, and B2 and B6 all play a role there. We need a little bit of all of them. Even B6 helps us synthesize our neurotransmitters like dopamine, serotonin, epinephrine, and norepinephrine. So your B vitamins are your superheroes, and they help keep your stress response intact. Now, one of my favorite things are adaptogens. And adaptogens are herbs that help balance your stress response either up or down to respond in a more normalized or equalized pattern. So these are things like ashwagandha, rhodiola, ginseng, licorice, holy basil. There's all kinds, Magnolia officinalis. So what these herbs do is they're like emotional shock absorbers. They help your body adapt to stress. Now, you may know that I have made a couple different products, and I did this because I wanted to have really high quality hormone balancing products. So one of my favorite products is Stress Less Mastery, and it's got Magnolia officinalis, otherwise known as Relora, along with L-theanine. This is your ultimate chill pill. What it does is it actually reduces the metabolized version of cortisol. So it actually reduces how much total circulating cortisol is available in the body by affecting one of the enzyme pathways. So it ratchets down the stress response. It's been shown to help with sleep. It's been shown to help with irritability and stress. It's even been shown to help with cortisol-related belly fat gain. And so I love that nutrient for that. So Stress Less Mastery has that and a little bit of L-theanine, which is a precursor to GABA. So it is super calming and super relaxing. My other adaptogenic product is a product called Energy Boost Mastery, which has a blend of herbs, things like ashwagandha, rhodiola, ginseng, that all help modulate your stress response. So what it does is help you feel a little more energetic, but not like you just did a bunch of caffeine energetic. A lot of your stimulating things make you feel sort of antsy, raise your heart rate, raise norepinephrine and epinephrine, adrenaline, which ultimately are going to raise your cortisol. You aren't hungry. You might be more effective at getting things done, but you feel that underlying sort of stress ratcheting up when you take them. So Energy Boost Mastery has the blend of adaptogenic herbs that help you feel more energetic, but more balanced at the same time. The cool thing is they work both ways. So if your energy is a little bit low, it can help boost it. If you're a little antsy and hyped up, they can actually adapt down and kind of block a little bit of that stress response. So adaptogens are very helpful. Now, omega-3s. Omega-3s have been shown, obviously, to reduce inflammation. And omega-3s are your fish oils, or otherwise known as krill oil also. You can get it in flax. You can get it in hemp hearts and walnut. Omega-3s are essential. That means we must consume them. We cannot make them in the body. EPA and DHA are the most important ones. Those two omega-3s get made into a thing called a myresin and a resolvin. And what those are the traffic cop for inflammation, right? So think of omega-3s are your help to reduce inflammation by allowing your body to turn it off when it needs to turn it off. We do need to have an inflammatory response short term to respond to injuries or infections, but we don't want that sucker to keep going. So omega-3s help to make the ingredient that turns that off. What it also shows is that it helps regulate cortisol spikes. So omega-3s, getting them in your diet on a regular basis, either from cold water fish like sardines, mackerel, salmon, or taking a high-quality fish oil is also really helpful because it can help reduce inflammatory activities, and then you get kind of a full body effect. They're cardiovascular protective, and you name it. That can also be really helpful. And again, there's an extraordinary amount of research showing that these basic supplements and nutrients can help you sort of ratchet down that stress response. So we want to be able to feel calm and grounded. So I want you to just take a moment and go, okay, I'm feeling calm and grounded, even when the holiday chaos is in full swing. These tools that we've already talked about are really going to help you take the reins. Now, I want to frame the last part of this conversation about bioidentical hormone replacement, how it might be a game changer for you. And you're right in the beginning of the season. It could actually be a game changer before you get to the end of the year, or at least start off the new year, right? So you need to understand that you're not going to be at battle with your hormones for forever. So if you are perimenopausal and it feels like you're on a wild roller coaster, you don't have to suffer. I think that's the most important part. I obviously do not treat. I'm a researcher and a nutrition professional. I have a team of people on my company, Minerva, that do treat, and we've been treating people in my clinic for 20 years. But we don't have to suffer as women. Replacing hormones with bioidentical hormones is where science meets empowerment, and it's actually the standard of care up until the last 20 years. So obviously, bioidentical hormone replacement therapy is designed to put back your natural hormones, the same biochemical hormones of estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone that your body had when it was fully functional, right? And so it's giving your body back its superpower. And so I want to talk specifically about how hormones, when we take bioidentical hormones, help regulate cortisol, improve your sleep, and really enhance your ability to handle stress. So first and foremost, when we restore estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone, but particularly estrogen and progesterone, what we often see very, very quickly is an improvement in sleep quality. Sleep quality gets better, we get more deep sleep, more REM sleep, and we get longer periods of sleep. When we see that, that means our cortisol at night has come down. That also means our cortisol levels are going to be better regulated throughout the day. And again, if I have those hormones on board, they also act as a sort of suppressant and a counterbalance to cortisol, which enhances our ability to handle stress. Now, there's several studies, but a study done by the North American Menopause Society showed that hormone therapy reduced stress-related symptoms. So a direct study looking at subjective measures of stress response, the women said resoundingly that they felt like their ability to handle stress was significantly better. I also want to say that testosterone has an impact here. Number one, it helps with your sense of joy, anticipation, and excitement. But because it has a positive impact on dopamine, and as a sidebar, it also helps a little bit with rest and restore and recovery, we see an improvement in hormones and stress response. So if you're considering hormone replacement and you're thinking about, gosh, I wonder if I should do this, what we know is when we get hormones back on track and we restore them to physiological levels, which I argue need to be tested, because just because you don't have hot flashes and night sweats and you happen to be on bioidentical hormones doesn't mean you're actually getting a therapeutic response. Because we know of, depending on which studies you look at, there's up to 100 different symptoms of menopause, right? Hot flashes and night sweats are 2 of those. So some women don't get them ever, right? Some women get them for a short period of time, or they're very few. And then some women have them and they never seem to go away. So they're not the only symptom, but they are a sign of things going on, and they do show an increased risk for heart attack and stroke, but they're not the only things. And so when you do bioidentical hormones, we want to make sure that we're getting to those therapeutic levels, which honestly, in a menopausal woman, we're looking at levels that are about 10% to 15% of what your body made on average over the cycle throughout the month, every single month. So the replacement levels are actually quite low. And especially when you compare them to things like birth control pills, which are synthetic and much higher dose, bioidentical hormone replacement therapy in women in perimenopause and menopause is actually a very low amount, stable amount to help the body restore biological function. And then when you do that, the need for cortisol and also the buffering effect of those hormones start to buffer cortisol. So we want to think about that. And so if this is one of those time periods where you're like, I just don't seem to have the deal with it chemistry anymore to deal with it, and you've done all those other things like work on your boundaries and get your diet dialed in, and you're still exercising and you're protecting your sleep, and maybe you're doing adaptogens and magnesium and omega-3s and those kind of things, your B vitamins, this might be a good time to think about how bioidentical hormone replacement may actually be advantageous to you because it's restoring physiological function. And it's safe when done corrected and tailored to your individual needs. And you're not too old, you're not too young to consider it. And honestly, from the research and everything that's out there, it should be on the table as a discussion for all women to really have the availability of bioidentical hormone replacement as part of your overall health span strategy. Now, if you look at the current studies and the current data in the United States, depending on which group you look at, it's between 1.83 to about 7% of the entire menopausal population are actually being treated with bioidentical hormones. So when people ask me, why am I on this soapbox? That is why. Because 100% of women go through menopause. 87% are highly symptomatic for at least an average of 8 years. Some people, they have symptoms the rest of their life. And we know that hormone replacement, when done well and managed appropriately and appropriately tested for, women have a reduced risk of mortality and death in all cause. And hey, guess what? They also feel better all the time. And their ability to handle holiday stressors and other things get much improved. So bioidentical hormones are something I think that should be on the table for you to discuss with your practitioner. And if you have some that can't discuss it, it's time to find a new one, because you've probably been feeling like you're a stress snowball running downhill, and bioidentical hormone replacement might be the key that can stop it in its tracks. So here's the bottom line. The holidays don't have to break you. And with the right nutrients, the right supplements, the right boundaries, the protection of your diet and lifestyle and making sure that we keep some of those basics in place so you don't completely fall off the rails and have to recover, 2 months out. Those things can really help you go from stressed to serene and really allow you to feel like the holiday hero you were also meant to be. Take back control and feel amazing. And not just for the holidays, but all year long. Because the best gift you can give yourself is the gift of balance. So you can really feel like yourself every single day and your best self that you can be. And remember, when all else fails, and there's always eggnog, of course, it's going to be a non-dairy, non-GMO eggnog, but there's always eggnog. So if today's episode of Menopause Mastery spoke to you, I want you to help spread the word and share it with a friend, because every woman needs to feel great during this time period of life. And if you want to check out some resources and information of the things I covered in the show, check out the show notes and share it with a woman who deserves a little peace in this holiday season. And I'll be back with you next week on Menopause Mastery.
Thank you so much for tuning in to the Menopause Mastery podcast. You are why I'm here, and I am so very grateful. Hit subscribe so you don't miss any wisdom on creating the most exceptional life on our terms. If this episode has helped you in any way, please share it with a friend to spread the love, and together we rise. You can follow me on social media at Betty Murray, PhD, and you can reach me online at bettymurray.com.